Okay, if everybody's ready to begin. All right, I would like to officially call to order the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Bolton Conservation Commission. And pursuant to the amendment of Bill H 3548 and Governor Keeley signing such amendments into law in March of 2023, expressing certain provisions of the open meeting law, this public meeting of the Town of Bolton Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by using Zoom Video Communications, Inc. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by telephone, cell phone, or personal computer using Zoom. And just some guidelines for Zoom users, please use the raise hand or chat function if you wish to address the board. Everybody remains on mute until they're actually addressed by the board. And we ask everybody to display their first and last names as part of their Zoom profile. All that said, by tradition, we will start with a roll call of present members. I am Brian Barabee.
Jim Garrity.
Laura Stevenson.
Rebecca Bachaya.
All right. And first up this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent filed by Matthew Morrow for 283 Wattaquatic Hill Road, the installation of a partial in-ground pool and associated grading. Rebecca, is the applicant or representative for the applicant here this evening?
Yes, I actually believe there's a couple of representatives for the applicant and possibly the property owner as well.
Okay.
But Matt Morrow, I believe, will be giving the summary and taking on this item.
Okay. That said, if you could unmute Matt, and Matt, if you want to kind of give us a quick overview of the project, or if somebody else wants to speak on behalf.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Matt Morrow, representing 283 Wattaquatic Hill Road. My client, property owner, is here this evening as well, as well as Ed Snyder from Snyder Pools. So essentially what we have, thank you, Rebecca, for doing that. What we have is we have a notice of intent that was filed for the construction of a semi-in-ground pool. So what that means essentially is you have the box outline for the pool, and what would be the patio area is outlined here. So essentially what a semi-in-ground pool would mean, it would mean essentially that the back half of the pool will actually stick out in order to preserve the existing elevation as much as possible. That way you prevent structures like retaining walls or extreme amounts of fill. It essentially minimizes the amount of fill that would be required for this particular structure. The patio would essentially go on the front section of the pool closest to the house. There would be no concrete apron on the back side. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. So the black line that I show on the plan is labeled for erosion control. The erosion control will serve a dual function. One, it will allow for a demarcation of the limit of work as far as, equipment access and such. It will also serve as erosion protection for the bordering vegetated wetland that I flagged on the property, which essentially starts at the wooded section of the property. The entire lot is about 40% developed. The remaining is actually still wooded. That's basically it. It's been issued a DEP number 112-0730. The other thing I would like to mention is that the pool is going to be 5 feet away from the edge of the wetland.
Okay. Just taking a look at it now. All right. I was going to say, do we know where the wetland buffer zones come out to off of this? Is that I see the edge of the BVW. Oh, there's the 75 foot. Now I can see it. I'm sorry. I just didn't see it earlier for some reason.
No, it's quite all right. I believe where I drew the erosion protection is 50 feet.
Yeah. All right. It seems pretty cut and dry what you're trying to do. This is one where I'm not familiar with the property, so this is one where I'd probably say I'd want to do a site visit just to kind of see it laid out in the field. And to see those things marked, basically, if the pool box, the pool patio box, where that's gonna lay, and then the limit of work where that's gonna be. I was gonna ask too, is this, do you know the maintenance for this pool? Is this a saltwater or is this a chemically treated pool?
This is a saltwater pool.
Okay. And I was gonna say, and usually we'll ask too, just for, we'll put in the order depending on some, for pool maintenance, that if it does need to be flushed or drained, that it gets drained away from the wetland resource areas, that it gets drained into upland or into a front yard, something along those lines. Is usually something we will look for when something is this close to basically the buffer zones. But that's basically it for my initial thoughts. It's just one where I think I would kind of want to see a site visit just to see it kind of laid out and to see what the topography of that lot actually looks like. So that said, I'll open it up to other commission members. Any initial comments, questions, and or thoughts?
No, I'd like to take a look at it as well, Brian.
Okay. Rebecca, did you have any initial comments or thoughts regarding this one?
I didn't. I'm also not extremely familiar with the site, so I figured the commission would want to schedule a site visit, which I'm happy to coordinate after this meeting. And in addition to that, you noted one of the conditions that the commission has used in the past, but one of the other conditions as well, and again, sort of the cart before the horse at the very moment, but one of the other conditions is to actually have it be pumped into a vehicle and then removed from the property, because depending on topography, sometimes it's difficult to pump that water away from the resource area without it backflowing into it. And
That's a fair
then,
point, yeah.
yeah, and then the other note was for the site visit to also stake out where the filtration system will be, if it will be within the patio area or if it will be outside of that area, because I know in the past that's something the commission has asked for also.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? All right, seeing none. Matt, does that kind of make sense? It sounds like we'd just like to come out and do a site visit, see exactly where it's going to sit and just have it marked out in the field. Do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, I don't think my client or the pool installer would have any objections to that. I'm sure he can get that all staked out for you pretty quickly.
Okay,
I think once you guys see the property, you'll really see how fairly straightforward this really is. So,
okay. So Rebecca is usually great at coordinating these things, figuring out everybody's schedule and trying to get us out there before our next meeting. And I'm sure she will follow up with you tomorrow on that. What was I gonna say, Rebecca, our next meeting date,
July 11th.
right? And
Yep.
what's our first open time?
I believe 7:45.
Okay. All right, in that
yeah,
case.
sounds
Matt-
good. I'll be there for you 7:15. So,
Perfect. All right, in that case, I'm gonna make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 283 Wattaquatic Hill Road until our next public meeting, Tuesday, July 11th at 7:45 PM. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you. Rebecca, I look forward to the email for the site visit.
Yep, you should hear from me tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Rebecca, are you good to continue? All right, so next up, the Bolton Conservation Commission. Sorry, Rebecca, is this a continuation? Did we actually open this hearing before? or was that more of a discussion when we first?
No, it's not a continuation. It was just an informal discussion.
Yep.
Because the Trails Committee had to go to the select board. And we know that the select board
Gotcha.
typically likes to hear what the initial response from the commission is. So this is actually, now they've gotten authorization.
Okay,
So now they're filing the RDA for the
Yeah.
work.
so now I'm going to officially open it. All right, so that said, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131 and the Section 40 and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability from the Bolton Trails Committee regarding a new trail from the existing horse fields over to Berlin Farm Road through town-owned property. Rebecca, are you going to give us a rundown, or do we have someone from the Trails Committee tonight to walk us through it?
Yep, Drew is present from the Trails Committee, and I believe he will be providing that. Can you all see my screen with the visual?
I can, yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
I was going to say, Drew, if you're good to go, we'd love to get a quick overview.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'm gonna start at the Clinton Savings Bank because it's probably the best landmark on this map, but it's on the top right of the screen. I don't know if someone can move their cursor. Yep. Perfect. So that lacrosse field that's right there next to the Clinton Savings, there's a trail that starts, existing trail that starts right behind that gate, and it goes along town property, very close to the new office / condominium complex at 580 Main Street, I believe. Then it connects to the old railway bed and exits kind of right behind the septic, the town septic building at the corner of that field. So my proposal would just be continuing the trail along the railway bed until it hits basically the soccer fields at Florence Sawyer, traveling south along the edge of the field that I think is being part of a restoration project that's ongoing to kind of make that more groomed area a little more natural. Then it's going to kind of cut into the woods and meander, picking up an old access road eventually. But it goes by some wetland areas and a vernal pool where it continues to a little stream. And then it connects up to to Berlin Road, right across from an additional conservation parcel owned by the Bolton Conservation Trust. So we're looking to continue the trail up through that parcel if this one is approved.
Okay. And thank you for reviewing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put it out there to other commission members. I know we've kind of walked through this project in the past. Do you have any outstanding questions for Drew, or any questions, comments right now for Drew, or regarding this project?
Just a quick question, Drew. You kind of go around. I guess the question is the intent to go or kind of around and go past the vernal pool, as opposed to cutting across the field and getting onto the existing car track? Is the reason because you want more distance and more area, or?
Yeah, just to not have it be cutting across a large open field and more in the woods, but
Yep.
that is the main point.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I should ask, are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? I'm not seeing any. Rebecca, love to get your thoughts. I know you've walked us through this project before. Seems pretty straightforward. I would imagine the RDA is written very similar to the way we like to see them written. Curious as to our options, or what you think some of our best options might be for a determination. In other words, I could see a -3. I'm just not sure if there are additional conditions we could put on it. I'm trying to think if any of the other ones would make sense in this thing. I suppose it could be a -3 with conditions as listed within the RDA itself. Would that make sense?
That's possible, yep. And then if the commission wanted to add anything that they typically do related to inspections or not removing any trees over 6-inch diameter, which this particular location, which I think we talked about at the last meeting that we had discussed this, but there's not much vegetation that needs to be
Right.
removed. There's some like blueberry that needs to be removed and some lower growing, some small white pine sapling or seedlings really. And Drew's route that he's placed on the map here is really specific to staying on areas that are relatively level and areas that would see foot traffic, whether that be from the school or people utilizing the fields. So those are the
Yeah,
relatively unique items that I would highlight in a condition, but I think that can be done with like an inspection pre and post or something like that.
yeah, the guys, because are there erosion controls associated with this?
No,
was
there
no-
wasn't, because there actually wasn't
It wasn't.
any
yeah,
earthwork proposed, and Drew can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
There's just,
Right.
like I said, some minor trimming of vegetation there.
But we could still do it with basically a site inspection, right? By saying that the conservation, the conservation agent would need to perform a site inspection before work was to begin and after work was completed, something along those lines.
Yep, and we can, we can flag it as well once it's approved, and so that the commission can go out at their leisure to review it as well.
Yeah,
So there are ways to identify it without needing or without using something that's not necessary for the project.
gotcha. Okay. So that said, commission members have any final thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? And not seeing any. All right. So I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for the request for determination of applicability by the Bolton Trails Committee for the Mechanic Street Fields Trail. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
all right, and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. Right. I'd like to make a motion that we issue a -3 determination for the request for determination of applicability for the Bolton Trails Committee's proposed project with the following conditions. That a site inspection be carried out by the town's conservation agent or members of the Conservation Commission before work is to begin. And that no woody vegetation over 6-inch diameter be removed as part of the project. And any other conditions that are laid out within the request for determination of applicability itself. Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Great, thank you. Drew, I will follow up with you once we have all signatures on that document.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Take care. Rebecca, I know we are ahead on, I don't think our next hearing is till 7:45.
Mhm.
Is there an update you can walk us through? Is there one in particular you think might be beneficial for us to jump to first?
I can run through the updates, but we do have the representative for, Meadow Road present because
Okay.
they would like to clarify their request for the field amendment. that
Okay.
was requested last time.
Yeah,
If
I
you
saw,
would like to address that first, or we can wait. I'm not sure how long that discussion might take.
well, I was gonna say, right now we have about 20 minutes, right? So I guess if we run it, if we're running up against time, we can always table it at that point.
Okay.
But for now, yeah, why don't we, if somebody is here to speak for the rep, please.
Okay.
Or a rep for the actual
Ryan
project on Meadow
and
Road.
Clayton.
Yep, Ryan Proctor from Dillis and Roy, here representing the owner and applicant Clayton Cruz for lot 5 and 6 Meadow Road. I apologize for not being here 2 weeks ago. I was on vacation, so I apologize for any confusion. Like Rebecca said, I'm here to hopefully clarify a few things relative to our request for a red line change for the order of conditions at lot 5 and 6 Meadow Road. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
Please, Rebecca, if you could allow.
Okay. Okay, so the plan I have on my screen now, this is the plan that was approved, I believe, in March of 2022. So a little over a year ago. If the commission remembers, there was a shared driveway. Lot 6 is this lot that's on my screen here, and there was a shared driveway that leads back to lot 5, which was the backland lot. There are wetlands on the property, primarily along the northern and easterly property line. If you remember from the site walk, it was determined that a lot of that buffer zone is caused from some runoff coming off of Annie Moore Road, so it is a bit of an odd wetland that runs the length of the property line. And then additionally, there was a potential vernal pool along the property line for lot 6 and lot 5, which is depicted here on the site plan. That is closer down gradient of the proposed work and closer towards Meadow Road. So the proposed project that we had presented at the beginning of last year, we had the shared driveway, we had erosion controls on each side of the proposed disturbance, and we had a small amount of wetland buffer zone disturbance for the construction of lot 6, the dwelling and the septic system. The applicant has since been working with the planning board through the driveway permit application process and the shade tree hearing as well. And out of those meetings and discussions with the planning board, there were a few modifications that were requested from the planning board and DPW director relative to stormwater that we've addressed on a revised plan, which I will switch over to now. So the revised plan, the layout of the driveway has remained exactly the same. We have not changed the center line, the width, or anything of that nature. The first change that we did, and I submitted this in the summary letter to the commission. We previously had stone recharge trenches on the side of the driveway, which were intended to capture and infiltrate stormwater. The planning board had expressed concerns relative to clogging in the wintertime. And they had requested that we instead provide grass swales with check dams on each side of the driveway, which would route stormwater down the driveway and ultimately into these stormwater basins, which were previously, they were shown on the approved plans from your commission a year and a half ago as well. The limit of disturbance, we have not gone any closer. We're still completely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone for the potential vernal pool, as well as the wetland to the eastern portion of the property line here. The erosion controls are in place currently, and they have not changed as we've not changed the limit of work, and we're not proposing any additional work within the buffer zone. The second change on this plan is a new house box, a new house footprint. A foundation plan was provided by the applicant, which was actually smaller than the previously approved house box. We've updated the site plan to have the latest foundation plan, but that limit of work and has not been increased from that the new house box we've submitted there. The planting schedule that was previously approved by the commission has remained exactly the same in the same footprint. So again, we did propose a little bit of disturbance here within the 100-foot buffer zone. So we had previously proposed some restoration and mitigation plantings there, and those have remained the same. Think that's all I have to say. I will switch over to quickly lot 5, the backland lot. So again, this is the larger wetland portion that comes off the hill up Anymore Road. This is the backland lot. The only change that we had on this plan, I'm gonna switch, I apologize for switching back and forth. This is going back to the newer plan that we submitted to planning board. The layout of the house and septic has remained exactly the same, as has the limit of work and the erosion control barrier, which is in place now. The only thing we've added some stormwater, stone trenches, and again, the grass swales on both sides of the driveway to capture and route that stormwater where we want it to go, to the basins at the bottom of the driveway. But all of this new work, these trenches are on the opposite side of the driveway as the vegetated wetland, and they are completely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So that's all I have to say for our changes. I think the reason I know the reason we're asking for a red line change, the previous order of conditions that were issued for both lots did address stormwater operation and maintenance. And we're not changing the system. I know there's some modifications to it here, but the operation and maintenance manual still covers operation and maintenance of the stormwater swales and all the devices that we're proposing. So we didn't really see a need to modify anything in the order of conditions because our changes are consistent with what was previously approved, and we're not increasing any disturbance within the wetland buffer zone. So that's all I have to say at this point. I'm happy to take any questions or comments relative to any of that.
Okay. I appreciate the walkthrough because it makes a little bit more sense now. And I can understand that you were kind of asked into doing it. It just seemed like it was significant enough changes when we first looked at it to how that flow was going to be going down into those, not catch basins, but down into it's hard for me to say. Again, it's relatively significant changes, but I can understand for the need for the changes, and I understand you're still trying to stay within the framework of what we were trying to address. I'm curious if other members of the commission have any initial comments, questions, or thoughts. And I'm curious, Rebecca, if you have thoughts or comments on this particular one.
I don't. I thought it was pertinent, though, that Ryan provide the update. Both Ryan and the applicant have been in contact with me to just express exactly what was relayed this evening regarding the limit of work and why those changes were proposed, even though it was outlined in Ryan's narrative. So the applicant had requested that they be put back on the agenda since no one could attend last time, to see if any clarification could provide, further clarification on the request of being a field amendment or red line amendment to Ryan's point there, or the amended notice of intent that the commission had noted last time. So I guess that is just clarification of what you would like to see or what you would accept from the applicant and their representative for this project so that they can continue on here.
I'm curious.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Lori.
I'm sorry.
Please.
The trenches on the second house, is that something that was there prior, or is that something new?
These ones here, Lori?
Right.
Those are new. Those are outside of the buffer zone. And like I said, we did have a line item in the operation and maintenance manual that was approved for stone recharge trenches. So that's how we saw that those were covered under the previously approved stormwater documents that we submitted.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I'm curious how the commission members think. I guess I'm tempted to say I think it would be okay to do it as an amendment to the order. And I'm sorry, Rebecca, what were some of our options again? I know there's,
Sorry, there's the field amendment or red line amendment, which
yeah,
that
you're
essentially
looking.
translates to it's shown in the as-built documents. And
Yep.
they obviously they've provided this revised plan. So they would just incorporate that into their as-built documents once everything's been completed.
Yep.
Or the amended notice of intent, which is they would have to refile and go through the notice of intent process again, be re-reviewed by DEP. Even with a field amendment, they do need to provide that to DEP as well.
Okay,
But it's just basically starting the process over or allowing it to be incorporated into the as-built due to either limits of work or as the applicant's representative here has been stating that they feel it's covered under existing documents that have already been approved by the commission.
okay. I guess all that said, I think, me personally, I'd be comfortable with doing it as a field amendment. I can see where that would make sense with everything we've heard so far. But curious if other commission members would prefer to see an amended notice or if they would be comfortable with a field amendment.
Yeah, I'd be okay with the red line, Brian. I guess, last meeting, I was under the impression that it was more significant than what was presented here tonight.
Same here.
Okay, all right. In that case, I'd like to call for a roll call vote to approve the field amendment as discussed and as plans were submitted as discussed at this evening's meeting for the field amendment to their project on Meadow Road, lots 5 and 6, DEP file number 112-0703. All those in favor of allowing this to go forward as a field amendment, please say aye, starting with Jim.
Aye.
Lori,
Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Aye.
no problem. And Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Bill's here also now.
Oh,
I
Bill, do
missed the beginning of this conversation, so I really shouldn't vote till the next
you want to
one.
just say abstain on this?
Abstain.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time tonight, everyone, and thanks for fitting us in. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, take care. All right. Rebecca, are you good to continue?
Yes.
All right. Sugar Road. All right, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public meeting under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent for 578 Sugar Road for the proposed construction of a single-family dwelling, driveway, and sewage disposal system. Rebecca, is the applicant or representative for the applicant here this evening?
Yes, we have James Moore in here. And I will let him present on this. But just to remind the commission, this was recently permitted through the permitting process. And this was done a couple months ago now, and we had some site visits. There was substantial discussion about it. This is associated and incorporated with lot 12, I believe, of Butternut, the development. So with that, I will hand it over to James.
James?
Yeah, I'm
Jim.
Jim is fine. I'm coming. I want to start my video. Okay, there I am.
Hey.
So Rebecca is correct. My goal was to bring this under an amended notice of intent. It was previously approved in the engineer at the time was Foresight Engineering, June 24th, 2022. Rebecca, can I share my screen, please?
Please.
You should be able to.
Okay. So here is the plan. The commission should be pretty familiar with the plan.
I'm not seeing them, Jim. They haven't come up. I'm still seeing you on my screen.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Hmm. Like, what do I have to click to share my screen? Does anybody know?
So you should hit the share screen, which should be at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Should be a green button.
Okay,
And when have you found that button?
I'm looking for it.
The other thing, I can share the plans that you have if you'd like.
Okay, please do. That's helpful, and I
Okay,
appreciate that, Rebecca.
Yeah. Let me just make sure it's the right one. Jim, I'm going to share it in just 1 second. If you
Yep.
can confirm that this is the correct,
Yes, that's the correct one.
I'm just going to zoom in on the
Okay.
plan here.
If you could just slide it up a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so
Yep.
much for that.
Yep.
So just to bring the commission up to speed, if you look at the gray box with the deck and all that, that was the original proposed that the commission had voted on and approved a notice of intent for. You know, stepping forward into time to today, we now have a buyer with this exact footprint. So we're able to show the commission exactly what we'd like to do there. And that's why I'm looking at an amended condition, amended notice of intent, I should say. So if we've done the math and all that, we've reduced our impact. We're disturbing less than 60%. So we're using, 1%. If you look at all the back gray area of the proposed dwelling that the commission voted on before, and then you step forward to today with the new footprint of the home, then again, we have reduced our impact in the river protection area by 60%. So we've gotten it down to, I can read you the square footage. So what the commission voted on before, previously in 2022, was total riverfront alteration of 11,777. We've reduced our total riverfront area disturbance down to 4,683. And again, we're able to do that by, coming in with the exact footprint of a home that people want to live in there, that's their home that they want us to build. And then, we're able to push it forward. We double checked with the local zoning officer about pushing the house further to the lot line and make sure we're not encroaching with that position. Then we're also providing some mounted evergreen trees for screening between the two dwellings. We've talked to the homeowner at 576, and he really liked that idea to be able to provide the screening between the two properties, because we're moving it forward, understanding the commission's desires to pull it furthest away from all wetland resource areas, being under the Rivers Protection Act. We do have a BVW on there. So this is the best we could do by pulling it all the way out to the lot towards 576. But just to recap quickly, we've reduced the impacts by 60%. We've, checked with zoning to be able to do that without encroaching. We've talked to the abutter and agreed upon a mounted evergreen trees there. You can see on the plan. So we're hopeful that, the commission would allow us to amend the notice of intent and accept this new drawing.
Okay.
So
Right.
I open up the questions at this point.
Okay, appreciate that. Yeah, I didn't have too many questions. I was looking at it when I first looked at it. I was looking at it yesterday, I think, when I was going through the packet, and I was trying to remember that this was that house. It's kind of a shared driveway, setback off Sugar. All right, I was
Yeah.
trying to picture the property, and I'll be curious to get Rebecca's comments in a little bit, because everything you're saying kind of rings true, Jim. It looks like you've pulled most of it up, forward, everything kind of moving in the direction that we would normally like to see it. So I don't know that I have a ton of questions right now, but I'll be curious to hear Rebecca's thoughts. But are there any initial questions or comments from members of the commission? All right. Let's see. Any initial questions or comments from members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Again, I'm not seeing any. All right. Rebecca, I'd love to get your thoughts on this particular project.
This site in general is a very tight site. As you recall, there was substantial discussion, communication with DEP as well, talking about the lot itself, the creation of it, tying back into the development, making sure that it met performance standards associated with the riverfront area. So I think regarding, you've already highlighted, pulling things out of jurisdictional area is a plus and something that the commission wanted to see originally. So this is certainly more towards their intention. I guess the comment I had was related to the last time this was permitted, the rear portion of the site, and actually much of the site, was to be left and maintained as meadow, basically outside of the septic area. And I think this layout actually may better direct that regarding use of the property and limitations on the site. So I just want to relay that to ensure that the commission incorporates anything like that into any decisions that they make on this lot, to make sure that those areas are protected and preserved as they were in that original permitting. And I guess my other question was to I think I can highlight it. Jim, you can see the screen, right?
That's correct.
Is this a dry well? Is that what I'm
Yeah.
reading here?
What we incorporated into the redesign is what the commission had seen before. Those were roof leader recharges for the entire roof. So there was there's number one and number two. We
Yep.
wanted to keep everything as similar as possible, but move it outside. So if the commission had discussions about recharge, we made sure we kept everything in there. We ended up also, I didn't mention, but we actually pulled the septic tank out of the 100-foot buffer zone.
Yep.
By putting it in front of the home too. So, but yeah, those are the recharge areas that were on the previous plan by Foresight that we reincorporated in our design.
Okay, thank you. And that
Yep.
was going to be my question, but then I spotted it at the same time, was how you're addressing roof runoff, but that answered my question. And then in terms of the grading of the driveway itself, so you have basically a turnaround there just below that dry well that I pointed out.
Yep.
And how, in terms of runoff and stormwater, how is that going to be directed across the site? Because I'm not really seeing
It will
contour
it'll-
lines that show
It will
how
go
that's
down.
going to.
If you see the circles, it's like a boulder retaining wall to
Yep.
be able to, keep that elevation up on that side of the home. So the water will sheet flow away from the home, off the wall, and kind of down along the grass meadow, and then eventually get to, if you look at the elevations, it'll get down to 262. So it'll come off the
Okay,
wall.
so it's going back towards the
It-
house in the wetland.
Well, it'll come, if you look at the garage, obviously where the driveway is where the garage is, so it'll sheet flow off of there, down the turnaround, over the wall and down onto the current grass meadow, and there'll be, it'll go down from that elevation down to 262, probably touch wetland flag A1, I guess, at elevation 262.
But you're not proposing any grading
No, our
on
limit,
that side of the home. So there's no grading proposed outside of those.
there is a
boulder
little bit of
placement.
grading, and let me explain that, how we're going to
Okay.
achieve that by pushing the home up further. And we really minimized, I didn't get into that at any time, but if you look at all the grading and the amount of fill that was required under the old design, we've cut the amount of fill we have to bring in to construct this location is about half. Went from say 12,000 yards down to, 1,200 yards down to 600 yards. But we are proposing a boulder retaining wall in order to keep the grade up for the driveway. That's what the circles are. Then they turn into the existing foundation and tie into that elevation of the foundation there. So there is some fill coming up. If you can look at the original grades like 263, you can see 263 in the driveway. Now it'll be 266. So it's coming up about 3 feet in that area. And what's going to hold that fill in is the boulder retaining wall that goes around and ties back into the house at the back side of the garage. And then
Okay, so
I was just going to finish.
Yep.
To explain my grading. So then the other one, in order to maintain the grade on the system that's necessary, is we have another proposed boulder retaining wall off the back right side. And then that's the extent of all our grading. So that's where all the grading stops. That's why I like the boulder retaining wall too, because it demarcates, kind of any of the grade or any of the fill we're bringing in.
okay. And your erosion control barrier is this yellow?
Yeah, we kept it the same.
Okay. Okay. I guess my one suggestion is, and I appreciate all of that insight and cutting the amount of fill that's coming in. But if you're not doing any work
Yeah.
back here, I think you could, my suggestion to the commission rather, would be to actually request that you pull this in. So you have access obviously to this well area, but making it a narrow point and then cutting it. Sorry, I'm just trying to, even pulling it. That may even be more than you need, but knowing you have to work around the site.
Right.
If you're not doing any grading in this area, I don't think there's any reason to have that limit of work that far into the resource area, because like you said, you have done a great job to pull everything out. But I think you could also pull up that erosion control barrier, which would, I believe your limit of work is marked by the erosion control barrier. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that, I guess that would be my suggestion to the commission. So nothing beyond this. And then is there any grading around the proposed deck here?
No, that's where the stairs come down. So you're coming off the first floor.
Yep.
If you look at top of concrete, it's like 268.5.
Yep.
So how we come off the first floor at 268.5 down to the grass, that stays at existing grade at 262.
Okay,
So you can see the stairs that would come down off the deck. So the deck being suspended in the air with pillars down at that grade, then you take the stairs downward down to the existing grade of 262.
okay. And then what are you doing for footings for the deck?
There would be precast concrete footings. That's what we typically use. They're usually supplied by Wachusett Precast. All approved by the building department, but they're precast that we would drop into a hole. Typically, we would dig a trench alongside the end of the deck, and then we place them where the supports need to go as far as the building code requires, called the span of the structure.
Okay. Okay, I think that may be all my questions for now, Brian.
Okay. So, and it was good. I had that same thought going through my head as we were going through, pulling the limit of work up. But I forgot where the well was, which thank you for pointing out where the well, because I know you're going to need to get access to that. So I think that kind of the way you drew that corner, Rebecca, would seem to make sense. Again, access to the well area, but removing a lot of that back lot area that they probably shouldn't need to get into anyways. I'm not sure the best way to write that up, but that was one thought. And the other thing I was thinking too, and I'm glad you brought this one up too, is I know we went through a lot of that with setting what area was to be meadow and to allow it to naturalize or do the once a year mowing or whatnot. And I think we even asked for it to be demarked, right? Usually we'll say in split rail fence or boulder or somehow to lay it out. And that was the other one with this. I would think we would move that probably forward, at least past, the 100-foot, probably coming like 25 feet off that 100-foot, again, knowing that they're going to need access to the well for routine maintenance and all of that good stuff. But I guess those are my two thoughts is just kind of pulling that limit of work and erosion controls in, and then resetting with the meadow area would be in the back.
So I guess, Brian, with that, the commission should, just so that Jim has some direction here, or some very clear direction.
Yep.
So moving the erosion control barrier forward, we talked about, and I would think that's clear, Jim, correct?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
correct.
So Brian, right now, this is where the split rail fence is, the erosion, the memorialization of the 25-foot no
Right.
disturb area, because the house corner was here,
Right.
the original proposed. So it sounds like you're suggesting is essentially coming this way with the split rail fence.
Yeah, even, if you, before you start going straight across, even if you follow the existing proposed fence
Yeah,
up to about there and,
Yeah.
up to almost where that bend is, and then
Right.
go straight across.
Yeah, I think that would be the
If that
ideal
makes
thing
sense,
for
because then you still
for
have
this
the-
homeowner. Yes, exactly. We would agree to install that fence of demarcation, and that would really lock off the back area.
okay,
And then if a well repair rig needed to get in there, this, like I was talking to with Rebecca, the split rail fence would easily come apart, could go back together.
Yeah.
There was one issue that came up with the split rail fence, and I actually called to talk to Rebecca about this, is that, believe it or not, in the covenant of the original subdivision, it talks about no fences would be erected without, permission from the declarant. But however, the declarant has passed away and the LLC is defunct. So that was one of the things I was wrestling with Rebecca prior, and the attorneys involved now are saying, well, we'll just put it up, and if somebody asks us to take it down, then we'll have to take it down or something.
And usually,
So-
I was
Go
gonna
ahead,
say,
Brian.
usually we'll put up options to demarc too, because we've also done boulders. If you want to do the 2-foot diameter boulders and yet
Right.
leave a gap big enough to get a truck through if you need to,
Right. I
just
think we,
different
I-
options, but I think you're all right with the fence. I think you'll be.
yeah,
all right.
I think we just put the fence up. Even the title company at this point is comfortable pushing it forward. The covenant is 20 years old. It goes to 30. There was one option that we knock on everybody's door, and we ask for permission, but we just said, if we're notifying everybody with this amended notice of intent, then, if somebody wanted to talk, to see what's happening on the site, they would probably come to this meeting. We did notify everybody.
and
So,
it does cover, just from the commission standpoint, is that in the order of conditions, it does say all the permits.
right.
That's a standard condition. So if there is ever a problem, they have the ability to work within those parameters as well.
Right. Yeah, no, I like what Brian was suggesting about right at that bend goes kind of across on that proposed line for a split rail fence. I think it'll be, a beautiful draft back to the house. It'll demarcate and keep people away. They could even put a gate in it if they wanted to walk down the rest of their property, anything like that. It's be very beautiful views of the meadow and all that. So,
It stops mowing encroachment.
yeah.
is what we found is usually
And
the
it-
big one.
Yep,
Um,
most definitely.
okay. So other commission members have either thoughts on what we just discussed, other things you might like to see, additional questions or comments based off what Rebecca was saying? Seeing any? All right. Jim, would you be all right if we continue this to our next meeting, basically just so we can put together the order, get our draft together, add in everything we discussed this evening? And then basically, I'm not seeing any questions from commission members. There's no members of the public here tonight that are contesting or questioning. I would hope we could just close it out and vote on it at that point. But I usually we'll try to leave it open just in case if you need to submit anything new or if something weird
Right.
comes up and all that.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with continuing it. I appreciate the commission's time,
Okay.
consideration for this project.
Brian, you may also want to request a revised plan that just shows the erosion control barrier moved and then the new location of the split rail fence so that we can properly reference that in the draft order.
That would be wonderful. Jim, do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, very, very easily done now that everything's in AutoCAD, so.
All right. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. So that said, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 578 Sugar Road until our next public meeting, Tuesday, July 11th at 8:00 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori, we have suspense.
She just said something.
Did you? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Lori?
Aye. Sorry,
Oh,
my
thanks.
connection's really bad tonight for some reason.
Sorry.
Okay, I was like, she seconded that, yeah. All
Yeah.
right, sorry, Bill Payne,
Aye.
all right, and Rebecca, I'm an I as well.
Great, thank you. So Jim, if you can get that to me
Yep.
by prior to noon, the Thursday prior to the meeting, I
Yep.
can incorporate that and hopefully the commission can deliberate at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep,
See you soon.
thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.
All right, Rebecca, you good to continue? All right. In that case, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, considering a notice of intent filed by the Mayflower Council of the Boy Scouts of America, now with DEP file number 112-0731. Rebecca, do we have an update on this? I think we
We
were waiting to
do.
put our conditions together and sorry, go ahead.
The order of conditions has been drafted and we have received the DEP file number. So that is what we are waiting for.
So any members of the commission have any comments, thoughts, questions? Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? All right, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for the Mayflower Council of the Boy Scouts of America, DEP file number 112-0731. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an I as well. I'd like to make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the Mayflower Council of the Boy Scouts of America's project DEP file number 112-0731 as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for approving the orders of condition?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an I as well.
All right, thank you.
No, it looks like we are right on time for DEP. Rebecca, if you want to give me a thumbs up, if you are good to, beautiful. All right. All right, so this is also a continuation. So the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, considering a notice of intent submitted by the Department of Public Works, DEP file number 112-0727. Rebecca, is there an update on this hearing?
Yes, and Frank McPartlin is representing
Ah.
the DPW, and he did submit, so at the last meeting, he had provided a brief summary of some revisions that were going to be made. And so those have been submitted to the commission. They were included in your packets. So if he needs to provide a summary of that, I'm sure he is able to do so. And just confirm as well that that has been sent to DEP.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Frank, if you are able to give a quick rundown and confirm, it looked like that was a confirmation.
Certainly.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, DEP was copied on this resubmittal at the same time as Rebecca. Have not received any comments from them at this time. What I did was more or less what I said at the previous meeting. I removed the slip lining option from the culvert repair, and now it's a standard excavate, pull out the existing 24-inch corrugated metal culvert and install a new 24-inch HDPE culvert, and then backfill and reconstruct the stone head walls on each end with essentially London block style retaining wall. That's basically a big concrete Lego block. They're like 48 inches wide, 42 inches deep, 18 inches tall. So that'll provide the contractor quite a bit of flexibility in placing those around the culvert at each end, as well as into the existing slope, and not have as much impact as constructing a cast in place concrete head wall on each end. So it'll more closely mimic the existing stone head walls. So I wouldn't so much say head walls, stacked stones that are on each end.
Right.
We're still proposing the beaver protection fence on the project that as I've said previously is similar to what's been installed in the town at other times in other locations. So should be fairly familiar with that. The limits of the excavation are shown on the plan. So I did everything that I could to limit the width of the excavation at the in the vicinity of the tree that's in question. So I feel we should be able to protect that tree during this excavation. That'll be part of the means and methods of the contractor to do that once this is bid. But it's definitely called out on the plans and it will be a part of their bid package. So everyone will be it'll be understood that they'll have to do everything they possibly can to protect that tree, all the trees around the project.
Okay. And I know that's a lot of what we were looking for last time, and I know we were waiting for the DEP file numbers. Well, let me put it out to commission members first. Any commission members have any initial comments, questions, thoughts? I was just saying, and all right, Rebecca, I'm curious your thoughts. Having seen these revised plans, I mean, it seemed to make sense to me with what we were trying to go for in order to replace the culvert in a way to try to save that tree, basically.
Yeah, it also aligns more readily with stream crossing standards, I believe. So in terms of DEP's concerns, it seems like this approach is something that's more typical that we see anyways. And I'm curious, did you send it to the environmental analyst who was assigned the project?
Yes,
or-
I
Yes, you
I
did.
sent it to
Okay,
the same
thank
one
you.
we've been corresponding with. So I copied Ciro and
Yep.
I copied Katie, I believe it was.
Okay.
I forget. I
Whoever
forget
the
name
analyst is,
offhand,
just
but
that's,
the same analyst, yes.
okay, perfect. That was just my curiosity because I know sometimes it can get stuck momentarily.
No, I wanted
Uh,
to make sure that it went to the right people.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of the armoring that was on the plans and discussed last time, I think that's appropriate regarding preservation of that tree. And then I guess my only other question was in association with your limits of work and basically the square footage breakdown of alterations within the different resource areas on site. Was there a substantial change in that, or could you just talk a little bit about that to the commission?
No, there no substantial change. Actually, a lot of the restoration that I had called out on the plan had been left over from my original, this is a circle back on a circle back. So my original design had been a replacement, a standard replacement, got some pushback with the tree, went to slip lining. But that restoration of the stream and the bank has been the same throughout this whole process. So I had assumed that whether we were slip lining or doing standard construction, someone was going to be working in the stream on each side, and we wanted to do that in the dry. So all that restoration is more or less the same.
Okay.
And,
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No,
My other question was related to the stream bed. I believe it was the natural bottom, and you're incorporating a mix of material or in terms of washing in fines and making sure as part of the construction phasing and process.
yes, anything that is put back in is going to be, has been called out to be equivalent to what's in place. Ideally, it's the same material, but we're not looking for them to drop junk in this in the stream bed at either end. But nothing in the culvert itself. The culvert itself should be just a pipe. So we're not proposing any kind of open bottom
Okay,
in this location.
so you're so my question with that is, so with these higher volume, higher velocity storms that we see water rushing through there. So is there accommodations at the inlet and outlet to accommodate some of that and some slowing? Because my concern would be it
No.
hits something relatively smooth and it's just gonna go through.
Yeah, so we're storing the existing capacity. We could call out placement of boulders at the end to provide some protection. Or even straight riprap on the south end. Probably the
On
limit
that
of
outlet side.
on the outlet side. It could be the limit of the lower end of the L of the wall.
So those are really my only questions and concerns, Brian, at this.
You're muted, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. So, well, let me ask, commission members have any comments or questions based on what they just heard from Rebecca? Seen any? Rebecca, the things you brought up, I'm trying to think of, I'm trying to pull up the order. Are some of those, I mean, it sounded like most of those would kind of hit the standard would want. Sorry.
I can draft language into an order.
Yeah.
um,
I'm just.
And then the commission can review that. But yeah, I guess that would be my primary concern, is just making sure that there's a relative roughness with either within the culvert itself or inlet outlet side.
No,
to be able to
it would end up
accommodate
being
that.
outlet side,
Yeah.
Rebecca. This is gonna be a standard pipe, so,
Okay.
All right.
I would ask, yeah, that we could just, add, outlet protection.
Okay.
All right. So that said, Frank, would you be all right if we could just continue this to our next meeting, basically for the purposes of getting our conditions written up? Because this will get Rebecca a chance to actually draft that in, send it around to commission members, make sure everybody's comfortable with the language. And then we can probably close it out at our next meeting. Would that make
Yes.
sense to you?
Yes,
Okay. Commission members, would that work for any, for you? Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. All right. And Rebecca, are you comfortable with that? Excellent. All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for the Department of Public Works, DEP file number 112-0727 until our next public hearing, Tuesday, July 11th at 8:15 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
Second,
All those in
Second.
favor, starting with Jim?
Aye.
Lori,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
and, Rebecca, I'll send you a quick sketch of that, I think, just to, so we have some kind of quantities that we can add to your language.
Regarding
Okay.
the outlet protection.
Yes, yeah,
Yep, that would
Okay.
be great if you could do that.
all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Rebecca, if you're good, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to discuss a notice of intent for 711/713 Main Street. And Rebecca, I believe we've been informed that they have asked for to be continued, as they are
Correct.
still awaiting answers to some of their questions, or we're still awaiting answers to some of their questions, and they are still working on getting those answers.
I
Um,
have received no update as to their status on working on those, but yes, they did request a continuance.
Any members of the commission have any reason why we would not continue? All right, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 711/713 Main Street till our next public meeting, Tuesday, July 11th at 8:15 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing? All right, all those in favor, starting with Jim?
Aye.
You already,
Yep.
sorry, Brian,
Sorry.
you already continued to an 8:15.
Oh, I'm so sorry. In that case, strike that. I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 711/713 Main Street. Actually, strike that. Let me say this quickly. Are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? All right, not seeing that. I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 711/713 Main Street until our next public meeting, Tuesday, July 11th at 8:25 p.m. or 8:20 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second,
All right, all those in favor, starting with Jim?
Aye.
Lori,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Okay. We have,
We get like a few minutes before South Bolton Road.
do you want to do minutes?
That would be wonderful. So commission members, did everybody have a chance to read through the minutes from our June 6th, 2023 meeting? If so, any edits, corrections, or changes? If not, does anybody need more time to read through those minutes? And seeing none, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for our June 6th, 2023 meeting as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for minute approval?
Second,
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Thank you. Do you want me to run through the other updates quickly?
That would be fantastic, please.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen quick. Whoa. So I was able to go out to do a site visit at 100 East End Road. That property is coming into compliance. They did get a reminder about maintaining the area beyond the boulder line as meadow instead of as lawn, which it's currently being maintained as. So that's just a monitoring period. And for Century Mill Estates, I did include in your packet a draft letter. So there have been some encroachment issues into open space. And this is something that has been going on, but it seems to have picked up recently. So it was suggested by some of our local officers to potentially do like a mass mailing to Century Mill Estates residents to just remind them that of the conservation land open space rules and regulations, and what's allowed, what's not allowed on those parcels. So again, the letter that was included in your packet was just a draft. If you're comfortable with that, I'm happy to send that out as a mailing. I think it is helpful, particularly where we're still working on installing a trail there. So the trailhead signs are not yet in place. The open space property signs are not yet in place. And as a reminder, the land is still owned by the developer, but will be turned over to the Bolton Conservation Trust. I believe they're working on that amidst the two of them, but the town does hold the conservation restriction and has for some time. So we do have the ability to enforce that on the property. So that is just that date. And if you need more time to review the draft letter, I'm happy to wait on that as well.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask what kind of encroachment was incurring?
So there has been some cases of motorized vehicles, so dirt bikes, four-wheelers.
Gotcha.
There has been some hunting violations on the property, some there was some what was described as pellet target shooting on the property. So like an airsoft or BB gun.
Yeah.
And things that are being done not to purposefully egregiously deteriorate the property, but unfortunately it is.
Sure.
And it's not an allowed use of the property.
I was
So
gonna say, yeah, most of those.
Yeah.
Especially motorized vehicles, all that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I read through the letter quickly. I thought it sounded fine as just a reminder. I don't know if other people want to have more time to read through it. I mean, I can always send you edits tomorrow. I can take a look at it. And maybe try to play around with it a little bit, but I thought in general it sounded fine. I thought it struck the right tone as a nice reminder relatively.
okay. Great. I
Sorry.
will take another look at that. And then if you have any edits, same thing to other commission members, just send them individually. Don't send them to everyone, and I will incorporate them into an updated letter. I'm going to run through the other updates if that's okay, Brian.
Please, that'd be great.
So the Learn to Fish event will be co-hosted by Mass Wildlife again this year, and it will be held at Bower Springs Conservation Area off of Flanagan Road. And it will be held Thursday, July 13th at 5:30 p.m. We are asking that people register in advance. I know the Tom Denny Nature Camp has been registered thus far. So if you have children going to that camp, it's likely that they will be participating. You are welcome to participate as well. But it is an event for all ages. It is not limited to children, and it does not matter if you're a beginner or advanced. It's a way to meet other individuals who are just getting into the sport, but also individuals who have some knowledge about different fish species, habitat, lures. And in addition to that, we have asked the environmental police to be present just for some educational and outreach opportunities, and they have said that they are available to assist in at least a portion of the event. So if you're interested in that aspect of it, they should be present as well. I'm going to skip the bog bridge at Rattlesnake for now in the land interest item. And for the Mass Trails Connectivity Improvement Project, I'm still continuing coordination. I'm finalizing the media packages so that as we have the work parties to build these crossings and crossing replacements rather and improvements, it will be very easy to advertise for those events, creating templates so that we can provide those invitations. In addition, and excuse me, all of the locations have been flagged at Vaughan Hills Conservation Area, and Annie Moore is the only crossing that has yet to be flagged, and that should be flagged shortly. Some of the trail stewardship projects are still listed. We're coordinating those days for work parties to see if anyone is interested in assisting. You can reach out and let me know. Some of those projects include the Vaughan Hill Woodside Drive Trailhead. So this is work associated with installation of water bars, the Vaughan Hill reroute of a relatively steep section that will incorporate some restoration work and include a switchback versus a straight down following the contours on the property. And the Bower Springs property from Flanagan Road Trailhead will be doing some invasive species removal, maintenance of the Norway spruce line along the first meadow as you pull into the property. And then the last item currently is the Welsh Pond Trail extensions to Sawyer Road. As previously stated, these projects will remain on the agenda until they are completed, and they will be removed at that time, just to show individuals that we have these opportunities and we would love for assistance with them. Our MVP project is coming to a close. The action grant for the Nashua River Communities Resilient Lands Management Program, or excuse me, project. Our final event will be held in our partner community of Clinton at Clinton Central Park on June 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. This is a family-friendly event. We have food and we have tables set up and some activities to participate in, along with just learning about what we've been doing for the past 2 years. We have some excellent deliverables that have come from that. I would also like to take a moment to recognize Minuteman student team that has been working with us as well. They recently participated in and have been recognized for the Envirothon. For their work, they went out and assessed Forbush Mill Fields and looked at that from a lens of climate resiliency. There's a story map up of the work that they produced as well, and I encourage you to look at it. I was very impressive from students, from anyone for that matter, but it also is going to be incorporated into our final guides and deliverables from this MVP project that we're finalizing. The opportunities that we have available are still there and open. We have our conservation land steward position open. Our conservation commission, we still have seats available. And the open space and recreation plan update. We have a wildlife photography contest going on. This is to assist us with the town wildlife inventory. And we'll also have the open space and recreation plan survey, which will directly drive the update itself regarding some of the components related to the action plan, which is a 7-year action plan that's at the end of the open space and recreation plan, but it actually directs my work, Parks and Rec, and some of the other town departments in terms of what we're working towards and our goals for the next 7 years. So that's really important to get your insights tied into when that survey comes out. And again, I would anticipate that to be available the beginning of July, I believe.
Sorry. Thank you for running us through all of those. Appreciate that. We were, South Bolton Road, right? All right, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, considering a notice of intent submitted for map 2.C parcel 16 on South Bolton Road, DEP file number 112-0720. All right, and Rebecca, remind me, we were basically waiting to put together our order based on the input we got from, was it MIPA they were waiting for?
Yes, and we also have a representative or a couple of representatives present to talk about, I was on a call with Richard, one of the team's representatives earlier today to talk about the open space that the commission had touched upon at the last meeting. So he provided a lot of great insight and clarification on that. So he may want to, or the commission may want him to provide that clarity to the commission as well. And I believe Brian from their team is also present to talk about any revisions to the plan or any updates to the plan.
Well, if Richard wouldn't mind giving us a quick rundown of what we're looking at here, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I've been Chip for 71 years, so Richard's my given name, but Chip Nyland representing the applicant here is an environmental attorney. I was brought in with respect to the conservation restriction. Brian Malisi is with us as well. So first of all, we're not looking to close the hearing this evening. We're just about finished with MIPA. We, as you may recall, because we're altering priority habitat in excess of 2 acres, we have to go through an EIR process. We went through the process with Natural Heritage, and they commented favorably upon our plan. And we've worked out the open space arrangement, which is what's in front of you. But we need to finish that off. So we want to keep that hearing open, but I thought it would be appropriate, A, to talk about what's happened with the plan, and then B, to talk about open space. And I'll let Brian go afterwards. So what I have here, and I know, I thank the commission because I think this has been, I usually don't get involved in projects unless there's some controversy, but this has been a good project, and I know the commission has been very supportive, and we appreciate that. So I think you're all familiar with the project site. It's 30 acres. As I said, it's priority habitat for the salamander. You've got all sorts of different colors here. Basically, what we're talking about in the green is, it's a 30-acre site, as I said. We're going to put 18.16 acres into a conservation restriction, and then probably close to another 3 acres in deed restrictions associated with lots. So if I can just, if you can see the green area, which is the hatched, that's going to be the CR. We're hoping that the Conservation Commission, acting under its authority under 48C, will take this in fee, that the town will support that, as opposed to a restriction. We think a fee would be more simple. And anyway, so that's the 18 acres. And when we dealt with, since this is priority habitat, when we talked to Jesse Leddick at Natural Heritage Program, he asked for two things. He asked that we have a 50-foot buffer on the east side, and the property line you can see down going run north to south, you can see in the red. I don't know who's got I don't have a cursor, maybe Rebecca does, but anyway, over on that east side, we're gonna have a 50-foot area that's also going to be a part of that 18-acre parcel for the open space. And that's going to run all the way down to the southern. You can see the north-south. It's pretty much consistent with the way the map reads. So we'll go down to the bottom to the south. So we're going to have 50. That 50-foot will be part of the 18 acres. He wanted to make sure that that was the case, and so we're going to handle that. And then the second thing is over on the western side, there where the old detention basin was, there's this funky looking trapezoid. There are two triangles over, keep going over to, yeah, right here. We're going to have those attached to lot 6. So that'll be a DR, which is a grant, it's a deed restriction as opposed to a CR. So that wouldn't be held by the town. That would be held by the owner of lot 6. And then the remainder of and I don't mean to go too fast here, but down to the southern portion, you see that there are 2 isolated wetlands with buffer around it, and you see the dark red around that area. So other than the 50-foot swath on the east side, the rest of that will be also deed restricted. Oh, thank you. Is that Brian doing that or somebody's doing that? That's terrific.
Rebecca, yeah.
Rebecca, terrific. Thank you. Far more talented than I am. So the rest of that will be a deed restriction as well under lots 1, 2, and 3. So as I said, of the 30 acres, by the time we finish this, more than 2/3 of this will be restricted in permanency. So we're hoping that we've got to do, Brian will talk about what he needs to do is just finish off and update this plan so it's consistent with what Natural Heritage has asked us to do and consistent with what I've represented tonight in terms of the open space. And then we're hoping that that, as I said, that the town would take that property in fee so that it would be publicly held and, couldn't be developed afterwards. So that's sort of racing through with a Reader's Digest version. I hope that as I know that you're all very familiar with the plan, what we're doing. So I think that we've come out with with a good plan for the natural heritage, for the town, and for the owners.
Thank you, Chip. Yeah. And Brian, if you wanted to give an update or your part of the presentation.
Sure. Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, Brian Melisi with Haley Ward with the civil engineers on the project. Just to expand a little bit on what Chip, his very first comments, the MEPA process is actually complete. They have issued their certificate. What we're currently working with now is we're working with the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife to come up with the final CMP or Conservation Management Permit. And I'm sure you guys have worked with these in the past, but the Fisheries and Wildlife cannot issue their permit until the MEPA process has been completed. And I do believe, and I hopefully Rebecca can shake her head in the affirmative, I do believe we provided the commission with a copy of the MEPA certificate itself. So that process has been closed. The applicant, Daniel and Jeff Martha, prior to us actually submitting with the Conservation Commission, we met with Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. We met with Jesse Leddick. We went through some of his concerns and what he would like to see. And so a lot of his concerns or his input was designed into the initial plan. And what we're doing now is just kind of finishing that up. This is a pretty kind of a colored rendition that will go in the permit package itself. What my office is working on currently is the final meets and bounds, Mylar plan that will be recorded with the registry on top as part of that conservation management permit. And so what it'll do, it'll list out, again, the green areas are the areas that are going to be actually conservation restrictions. It's going to map out the areas for the deed restrictions over some of the individual, residential lots, in which the permit can refer to as on a recorded plan process. And so just to kind of expand on that just a little bit, but that's where we're at. So this is a little bit confusing, with the green hatch and the red and the purples, but it kind of maps out all the, all the areas on the site where we're going to develop, where we're going to hold some of those restricted areas. And now to give the commission a very quick update from the planning board is the planning board, for what we understood, the planning board was just about ready to close a hearing and issue their subdivision approval. I know one of the last bits that they're kind of wrestling with is who's actually going to take over or own these restricted areas. However, at the last 2 meetings, I believe, or 2 meetings ago, and I call him the new planner. He's not new anymore. He was new to this because when we first initially submitted this, Mr. Miller wasn't on board. But they are currently going to do a peer review. They've hired Judith Nitz Engineering to do a review. They hadn't done one of those before. So we're kind of waiting for that peer review to come in to see if there's any plan revisions that may be requested. There hasn't been any plan revisions requested in months, but who knows what Nitz Engineering will come up with. They may want something changed here or there. Once we do get that, we will issue we will either revise the plans and issue new ones, or we will say, hey, this is the set of plans that everybody's kind of agreed on. And I do believe, and again, I don't want to throw any words in Chip's mouth, but I do believe when you talked to Rebecca earlier this afternoon, that's one of the reasons they kind of agreed, or at least suggested that the hearing be held open so that we can get that peer review to make sure that everybody's looking at the same exact plan when they go to hopefully issue their approvals.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both for the update. I can see, and again, I like the colors. I can see how you've laid it out here. The question of taking it in fee versus restriction, that's an interesting one. I'll be curious to hear Rebecca's thoughts on that. But any members of the commission have any initial thoughts, comments, or questions based on what we've heard this evening?
Yeah, I had the same question about the CR being in fee, so I was a little curious as to exactly what that means.
Okay.
Would you like me to, you want to wait for other questions, or you let me know if you'd like me to answer that question?
Well, why don't we wait for other questions for 1 second, Chip, because that might be the only one we have going, but let me just see if are there any other questions from commission members? Let's see, and are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? All right. That said, well, Chip, if you want to go first, I'd love to hear Rebecca's thoughts on taking it in fee versus a restriction, what the options are there, what people have seen works better, or what, yeah, I'm trying to think what we've done in the past. But Chip, if you had a quick rundown, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Sure. And I've been doing this for a while, so in front of most conservation commissions, they take one or the other. My experience is that conservation commissions, since you're authorized by statute to hold land or hold a restriction, you can obviously do either. The obvious difference is that if you own it in fee, that you have total control over the property in terms of what takes place. You could put a restriction on as well, and you can determine after talking to Natural Heritage if you wanted to put a trail in or otherwise. If it's a restriction, then that is the grantor, which would have to be a homeowners association, some derivation of this owner. This is an open space development with 6 lots. I think the preference would be to, take care of those lots, and then you wouldn't have any further responsibility. But in the conservation restriction, you have an enforcement and a monitoring. You have the ability to watch what's going on an annual basis or more often, depending on what you want to do, and make sure that everything is operated like it says in the conservation restriction. Conservation restriction document is there's a form with the state uses. It's about 22 pages long, and it has prohibited uses and allowed uses. And the grantee would be the town, the Conservation Commission, and you would be the one who would be enforcing to make sure that work doesn't take place out there. If, on the other hand, you owned it, then you would have total responsibility. You wouldn't be answerable to anybody else, because you would be you'd be the owner. And that's why in most communities, you know, especially for a large expanse, sometimes not for smaller ones, but a large expanse like this, you know, the commission would rather hold it rather than just have a restriction on it.
And I just wanted to, and I'll get Rebecca's thoughts on this too, because usually sometimes we'll hold it, and we have a trust that we can work with for restrictions as well. But just curious, it seemed like earlier you were saying that would be the applicant's preference as well, is to turn it over in fee rather than to set up like an HOA and you know, keep it as and set up a restriction. I guess you could work either way, but do you have a preference?
Well, we would prefer to convey it to the town in fee. I think that would make the most sense to us. But again, that's your election. You know, we prefer it because I think it's much cleaner. You know, that will leave us with, as I said, the small areas that will be restricted by deed for lot 6, and then the one in the southeast to lots 1, 2, and portion of 3.
All right. Rebecca, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So at the discussion I had with Chip or Richard at this afternoon was relayed by him earlier in this meeting. And essentially, I had relayed to him what the commission had relayed at the last meeting, being that the preference is always that the town or the local land trust holds the land, and then the other holds the CR over it. That's sort of a perfect situation. And with that, we talked further about holding the land. Now, with that, obviously, they have to subdivide that parcel out. That's on them. I also talked about the process that we still have to get authorization from the select board, as we do for any donation. And that is another reason why I had mentioned we may want not only for the plans as discussed previously, but we may also want to continue so that we can request to be put on a select board agenda to get their insight on that, and planning board, to make sure that all the boards are on the same page with that, to ensure that the commission doesn't incorporate something into their decision and not be and put them into a corner, essentially, that we don't mean to. The other thing that I had discussed was if the commission were interested in holding that land in fee, so meaning it be the land being turned over to the town versus held in a CR, that it be explicitly incorporated components of what natural heritage intention for that property going into conservation and their concerns and their interest is. And that's something that can be written into deed documents or conveyance documents as well, but that's something, again, that planning board should be involved with, and select board as well. So those are my insights as far as the open space. One thing that is sort of separate but was mentioned during a phone call earlier was the basin moving. So no one had touched upon that. So I don't know if Brian wanted to just provide some clarification on that.
Yeah, so just real
Not
quick.
to
so
change the subject.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so we talked about the basin being moved. The original design that I had done, my office had done, and that we had floated around to Natural Heritage had the basin in the area where you see kind of the light yellow. Nope, not that one, right there. So we originally had the basin designed over in that area. And then when Jesse Leddick from Natural Heritage met with the applicant, he had said, well, how come we can't put the basin and flop it where you see the green is currently? And I had said, well, there's no reason why we can't. One area is going to be used for septic system, one area is going to be used for stormwater. So the plan that actually went into the planning board, as well as into your commission, has the detention basin in that front area. So while we talk about it being moved, it wasn't really moved as far as you guys know. It was moved before you guys actually get to see the plans. And so
Thank you. Thank you
we
for
had
that.
soil
clarification.
testing in both areas. Again, when we were out there doing soil testing for septic systems and whatnot. So there's plenty of soil testing in both areas. So we were able to easily swap it. That was one of the changes that Natural Heritage had asked us to do kind of at the outset.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
And then just while I'm unmuted, Rebecca, just very quickly. So this plan that went into the planning board is a Fosberg plan, or a farmland and open space planned residential development. So as part of that, it needs to have open space. And so the open space parcel, as well as an open space area, that's already on the definitive plans. You'll see the first couple pages of the subdivision plans that you guys were given are really the land plans or the definitive plans. So those parcels have already been identified. There's certain criteria that the planning board regulations call for, or subdivision, well, actually it's the zoning regulations who call for that. So that's always been on the plan from the get-go as well. The one things that we do need to add would be the deed restricted areas.
Okay.
And then just the plan, just as if you have to revise any of the plans or not, just making sure that you're submitting that to the commission, and that any stormwater infrastructure is shown on the plans that the commission also receives, including any grading, elevation changes, and in our bylaw, you'll see an outline of what needs to be on those plans, if it's not already, but where you're reviewing your plans currently and where the commission sounds like they're going to be continuing again, just make sure that all of those components are in those final plans.
Yeah, and they are. It's a full set of definitive subdivision plans, land plans, grading plans, utility plans, erosion control plans. Everything is within that set.
And as Mr. Chairman, as I indicated to Rebecca today, there are a lot of moving parts here. And that's why I would prefer to keep the notice of intent open based upon what happens with the stormwater review. We're very comfortable with our plan. Also with the CMP review by Natural Heritage, who knows what could happen. So, you know, at some point we'll be ready to close and to get an order of conditions. But what we don't want to do is close and then something pops up and then we have to come back with an amended order or otherwise. So, and also to have, as Rebecca and I talked about today, have a chance to take a look at what the order is, just to make sure that there aren't any conflicts with what's going on with the planning board or Natural Heritage.
You know, we tend to like to do it the same way too. I'd rather just keep it open until, especially if we're waiting to hear back and if they're going to have a peer review and anything needs to be moved or changed. So that's how we can easily continue it until our next meeting.
And I thought that tonight would
Right.
be helpful. We had to wait for Natural Heritage to find out where they were on the open space. That's why we haven't been back to you before. And I'm sorry that, you know, we couldn't have this discussion earlier, but we wanted to put it, even though we're still with the moving parts, we thought it'd be appropriate to put this in front of the commission so you could have some thought about how you'd like to hold it.
No, I appreciate you saying that. We do understand why we were waiting. We knew what you guys were waiting for and that, you know, you were trying to move it along. I appreciate the rundown tonight. Rebecca, if you can, as you said, try to coordinate with some of those other departments so we can get in front of the select board to ask them about gifting the land. I know that's generally our preferred method too, is to take the land in fee and then to have the trust hold a CR on it. And I'll put it out there to other commission members. Everybody comfortable going that route? Proposing to the select board that we do take the land and then down the line we can put a CR on it, working with the trust, or would people prefer to see just a CR on it? Everybody comfortable with going along that method?
Yes.
Okay. So then Rebecca, if you can get us on their radar.
Yep, I can follow up with them.
That'd be fantastic. And you know, that said, to Chip and Brian, and you know, I just think we'll wait to hear the updates. Again, we can continue this till our next meeting, see what we hear, see what comes in from the other departments and try to move it forward from there. But I think we were comfortable with the changes that we've seen so far. And what you're proposing for the open space and the conservation land. I don't think there were any questions or issues with that. With the moved basin, everybody seemed comfortable with. Commission members, am I speaking correctly? Anybody have any major questions, comments, concerns as to how the plans look now, knowing that they may need to be modified again? All right, so it looks like everybody's pretty comfortable with where things stand now. And I was gonna say, unless somebody has something they want to add, I will probably go ahead and continue this to our next meeting. Rebecca, were there any unanswered questions or any guidance you needed from the commission that you weren't hearing yet?
Not at this time. Like I said, I think the next meeting, hopefully we'll have maybe the peer review completed by planning board, so maybe there'll be some review then.
Okay, all right. So that said, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for South Bolton Road DEP file number 112-0720 until our next public hearing, Tuesday, July 11th at 8:35 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second,
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Excuse me. Rebecca, you good to continue? Okay. Next up this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, considering a request for determination of applicability for 101 Nashaway Road. Excuse me, as I'm starting to lose my voice. I can attest on this one. Last time we had set it up, we had held it over for a site visit. I did have a chance to go out to the site with Rebecca. I will say it's an interesting project. It's very cut and dry exactly where it is. It's kind of going over the existing footprint of an existing almost greenhouse, which is on a concrete slab already. The topography of the lawn is interesting. There's almost an upper lawn and a lower lawn. There's kind of an upper lawn and then almost a retaining wall, big drop off to the lower lawn, and everything kind of cascades down to the wetlands from there. But the upper lawn was pretty isolated from everything, fairly well cut off. I don't think they were looking to increase their footprint at all. We talked a little bit about stockpiling of materials and any construction equipment, machinery that needed to be in, and they thought that would be fine, keeping that out of that back lower yard. So just to the upper yard, which again is very isolated, in the driveway area. Again, seemed pretty cut and dry exactly where it was going. Rebecca, did I catch most of it? I'm trying to think if you have any thoughts of your own, something you want to add.
I think you captured everything. The only thing that was left out is we talked about roof runoff.
Yep.
And either directing it into a rain garden adjacent to the lawn area and or directing it to a dry well.
Yeah, and I know it looked like they had an existing dry well that the rest of the house tied into. So I would think it was easiest for them to tie it into that. But if we were to issue an RDA, we could probably give them the option, right? To say that roof runoff will either be captured via dry well or rain, well, either be captured into existing dry well or dry wells, or I was say rain gardens, but other appropriate.
Yeah.
Trying to think of good wording for that. But yeah, that's one I had forgot. So any members of the commission have comments, questions, or thoughts? All right. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? All right. So Rebecca, I guess I'm just trying to help with wording as I'm starting to lose my voice and my mind. It was so roof runoff from the addition should be either tied into a dry well system or trying to think of a good way to word this.
You could just say a dry well system. I think
Okay.
that's sufficient. And I think that from the discussion with the individual on site, I think they preferred that.
It sounded, yeah, all right. Okay. And that said, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for 101 Nashway Road. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. I'd like to make a motion that we issue a -3 determination for 101 Nashway Road with the following conditions: that roof runoff from the new addition be directed into a dry well system, that all construction materials and machinery be stockpiled outside of the buffer zones and wetland zones as much as is practicable, and that work is limited to the upper back lawn and side lawns of the property, and no construction equipment should be entering into the lower backyard. Do I hear a second for that? And before I hear a second, Rebecca, as I stated it with the upper and lower backyard, trying to think how to actually write that into the order so it makes sense.
What I'm gonna do is I'll just reference the terracing on the property and just reference it via north and south.
That would be perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that said, do I hear a second for that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
I'm sorry, who had the second on that? I'm still writing that last condition.
I did.
Okay, thanks, Lori.
Do you want to discuss a bog bridge?
Yes. Bear with me for one moment.
Sure.
So this request had come from a Trails Committee member regarding an area in the Rattlesnake Conservation Property. Sorry, I'm just pulling this up. It's going to take me another minute to pull that up, but essentially it's an area that stays wet. It doesn't have a substantial amount of wetland vegetation where the crossing is, but there is some flow through the area. It's not a perennial stream, but it does certainly have seasonal flow. Excuse me. And as we all know, when people walk across the area, it just continues to widen and widen. And so now there's a substantial wet area, and it used to be a smaller area that could be circumvented. So the ask is to construct a bog bridge across that wet area. And it can be seen as temporary regarding the infrastructure proposed, but it will be there in a permanent manner. So let me, I'm just trying to pull it up. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me for a moment.
No problem.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Well, I
Okay.
can-
So if you are familiar with the trailhead off of 117 by the lime kiln, you can follow the trail. It's probably easier to get there actually from the conservation restriction off of Sugar Road, but just following it through for orientation purposes, this is the area right here that's circled.
I was gonna say, how long of a bridge?
Uh, it's quite
That'd be
long.
significant, yeah.
Yep. And so we watched this, hoping that this was brought to my attention previously. And we were watching it, hoping that maybe it was something that just in our years that are increase in precipitation or high water tables, we see that coming through and becoming more of a problem. But it really is about 40 feet along the trail for several months, if not the whole year, as described in this. So the proposed solution is a boardwalk, but essentially it will be quite a long section, or excuse me, duck boards.
Yeah, multiple.
So again, just a cross section. What's being proposed, so here we have the support and footing, similar to this. And then we have the details here regarding the materials needed. So looking at utilizing wood materials, pressure treated, and then spanning about 48 feet. So that would be across the segment,
Yeah.
which is, it's
There it
quite
is.
substantial, but we're hoping that with that installation, it would actually reduce and direct people to be walking across that. We still may have some horses or other trail users who may choose to still go in the area adjacent to it, but hoping to direct at least the foot traffic across.
Yeah, I mean, it seems necessary. I mean, you can kind of see what the problem is there. As you stated, it's not 100% permanent, so we can put it up, and if it alleviates the problem and things get better, great. And if it's not helping at all and things are getting worse, we can easily remove it. I don't have an issue with the project. I think it sounds like the reasonable and responsible way to go in this particular section of the trail, rather than trying to reroute or anything like that. But I'll put it up. Go ahead. What were you
Just
gonna
a
say?
note too, because it's adjacent to a wetland resource area, it will require a wetland filing. But we just didn't, again, similar to the last project, we didn't want the commission to be not authorizing it and then be submitting something that the commission wouldn't be reviewing anyway.
So I'll put it out to other commission members. I'm comfortable with it as you're proposing it. I can see the need for it. But curious, other thoughts, comments, questions?
Looks good.
All right. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular project? And again, not seeing any.
Only in favor of it.
Yeah, okay, good. That makes it easier. So Rebecca, It sounds like we're all pretty much in favor of it as it's proposed. A roll call vote is probably, okay. In that case.
Yeah, I think just authorizing the wetland permit to be submitted would be sufficient for this evening.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to poll the commission for the purposes of authorizing the wetland notice regarding trail work within the Rattlesnake Conservation Area. All those in favor, please say aye, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca. I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you like me to move on to the next item?
Yes, please.
So the next item is relative to some parcels that were just sharing my screen, that were taken by the town via tax title. And so some of those properties are going to, as part of the review process by the staff person who is in charge of whether lots go to auction or not, we realized that some of these parcels wouldn't be able to be developed essentially and may serve a conservation purpose better. So I was directed by that staff person to bring it forward to the Conservation Commission and start the process of potentially having it turned over to the Conservation Commission. I apologize, my dog in the back.
It's okay.
The process, as we're aware, is it has to come from the commission, whether there's interest in having that lot be held under the Conservation Commission as land manager on the behalf of the town. It becomes protected under Article 97 and under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. The commission also has relayed, I feel like we just talked about this, so it's fresh in everyone's mind. The commission does have the ability to reach out to land trusts to hold a conservation restriction over it as well, depending upon how they want to approach it. So this is the first parcel at the end of Quaker Lane, adjacent to 495. There's substantial wetland here, along with adjacent upland resource area, floodplain associated with a perennial stream that comes into this area. This is not an area where we would have passive recreation or trails through due to the substantial resource areas, but there may be some educational opportunities there, in addition to conserving the land for its resource value and the natural resource value to the town itself. So that was one parcel. It's 5.05 acres. And again, substantial resource areas across the entirety of the lot at the end of Quaker Lane, adjacent to 495. Any questions, or do you want me to move on to the other parcel?
I mean, I don't have, with it, I'm trying to picture the area. I can kind of picture what it looks like. And a lot of this, if you think it's significant enough natural resources or to worthy of protection, I would take your word on it. I can kind of picture the area. So I think I would be fine with that. I don't know if any other commission members have comments, questions, or thoughts regarding this particular parcel. Do you want to pull up the other one, Rebecca?
Yep. Go ahead. So this parcel is much more substantial in terms of the value and potential passive recreational interest. This parcel here, so here's Main Street, just to orient you, Manor Road. We have the town common here, or the back side of it. We have Powder Hill Conservation Area, or the Philbin Conservation Area here. We have the property owned by the adjacent church. And then we have this parcel back here adjacent to a privately owned conservation restriction. So here we have, actually it's overlaid and under the overlay of the perennial stream. So we have the perennial stream, 200-foot riverfront area. There's actually multiple vernal pools along and within this riverfront area as well. There's a substantial wetland system here. There is upland area here as well, so there is an opportunity for passive recreation there or trails. There is potential for even some less intrusive in terms of like need for clear cutting or clearing of an area, potential for active recreation in this location as well. And then we obviously have the town common, which blocks off any vehicular access to this rear lot here. So this is an area you may also see this hatching over it. It's also of substantial interest to Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program for their interests. So as you heard in one of the prior hearings this evening, that is something if we were going to put in any passive recreation trails or even active recreation, if the town was interested in doing something along those lines here, we would still be reaching out to Natural Heritage to ensure that it's not causing any negative impacts to the habitat and or species that exist within this area. But this is adjacent to other conservation lands. It's adjacent to areas used by the town, not only for those natural resource and ecological benefits, but this is a substantial and key parcel to that ecological area at the rear of town common. So this is a parcel. The other parcel I think is important, but this meets almost all of the, if not all of the criteria when we look at assessing whether or not a parcel is meeting the requirements of being held by the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'll open it up to commission members. I have no issue. It makes sense, especially connectivity wise, where it's located, what it's connected to, the resource areas within it. This one kind of seems like this would be a perfect fit. I have no issue, and I'd recommend to the select board that we do take this. But other commission members have comments, thoughts, questions regarding this particular property?
Yeah, I think it looks great. How big is the lot, Rebecca?
I can tell you in 1 second. I didn't have that on this particular overlay, so I apologize, but bear
No,
with me.
just a rough is just a wild guess would work for me.
I don't have that, and I don't want to say incorrectly. Well,
Drew says approximately.
Drew says it's 12
Okay,
acres.
right.
He's on top of this. He's been looking into this too. Thanks,
Yeah,
Drew.
I think it's great. Yeah, this is perfect.
So nobody has any reason why we would not recommend to the select board that we do take ownership over this particular property. All right. And again, Rebecca, we're looking for like a roll call vote.
Yeah, if the commission wouldn't mind to take a vote
Separate.
that they recommend to the select board. If it's the same for both, I think it can be done in one. If it's
Yeah.
not, then it would be two separate. So
Okay.
it's 5C20 off of Main Street and 2C8 off of Quaker Lane.
Okay. I'm going to try to put them both together because I think we're interested in both. Everybody's comfortable with that. All right, in that case, I'm going to call on the commission. I'm going to call on a roll call vote of commission members who are in favor of recommending to the Bolton Select Board that the commission take ownership of parcel 2.C, map 2.C parcel 8 off of Quaker Lane and map 5.C parcel 20 off of Main Street. All those in favor, please say aye. Starting with Jim.
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca. I'm an aye as well on that one.
Okay, great, thank you. And again, those are currently owned by the town, but it's just the recommendation is to switch it to the Conservation Commission ownership for those
Okay.
protections.
Is that, we actually got through everything?
I think that's it, Brian.
Wow. All right. Any commission members have any new business? You want to tell us how they're celebrating the solstice? All right. Hearing no celebration plans, I would like to make a motion that we hereby adjourn the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I hear a second for adjourning?
Second,
All those in favor, starting with Jim,
Aye.
Lori,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an I as well. And as always, Rebecca, thank you for everything, and commission members, always great to talk to you. We will be seeing you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. And please check your emails tomorrow and let me know, or even just send it tonight. Let me know your availability for site visits, please.
Good call.